Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on an early Tuesday evening. Hopefully you guys are having a great start to your week so far. Baseball's off to a rocking start. We saw at the end of this past week, Shohei Ohtani agreed to that 10-year, $700 million deal, $68 million per season of which is deferred until after the contract is actually over. Great deal for the Dodgers, and of course Ohtani becomes the highest paid athlete in professional sports history with that deal. So we'll see what ultimately happens with the Dodgers and them going forward, but there's been a flurry of movement today. As we expected, once Ohtani signed, we'd see a little bit of that logjam begin to clear, and we saw some of that today, especially on the pitching side. But let's start first with the San Francisco Giants and Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani, of course, they were in the running for Shohei. They were willing to spend the money. In an interview today, the GM there, Farhan Zaidi, said that while they were in the market for Shohei, and they were certainly all the way in there, he actually confirmed that they were willing to go as far as the Dodgers were. 10 years, $700 million. They were willing to do the deferral as well and sign other players in addition to that, and yet Ohtani decided to go to the Dodgers. I find this is a little bit of sour grapes anyway as far as Farhan Zaidi is concerned, just because why would Shohei's camp say, hey, after we've already gotten this deal, the Dodgers have already said, yes, we'll go ahead and do this, take that same offer, shop it around, give it to the Giants. Giants say, yeah, we'll do the same thing, only to go back to the Dodgers and say, we'll go ahead and take that deal anyway. The reason why you do that is usually to either up the offer or something along those lines. Maybe they did do that and they ultimately weren't able to get the Dodgers to go any higher. But if you're talking about those two teams playing at that high of a price range, I'm honestly not surprised, I'll put it this way. I'm honestly surprised that either one, they didn't raise the price as far as the Dodgers, or two, that this is a complete lie coming from Farhan Zaidi. So I don't doubt that they were in there for the Giant or for Shohei Ohtani. I don't doubt that they were all the way in there until the very end. I just don't think that Shohei Ohtani would have given them the opportunity to match that offer, only just to turn around and say, I don't think so. So Giants, of course, pivoted quickly today. They signed Young Ho Lee from the KBO, the top position player coming over from the international market. He, of course, spent the past season injured. However, he was the MVP of that league a year ago. Looked like he was going to be the next Masataka Yoshida from the Boston Red Sox, maybe a little bit better version of that, possibly, coming over from the KBO, especially when you consider his age. He's only 25 years old, just like Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And a lot of young international superstars coming out right now. It's probably the biggest international free agent class we've ever seen, and Giants strike big. The contract figures, 6 years, $113 million, more than what he was expected to get from MLB.com anyway. So we'll see what ultimately happens for the Giants, but a good lineup here, or at least a good building block now for the lineup. Do I think he's the superstar that they need, the linchpin to, drive 10 plus years of success in the NL West with the Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts led Dodgers in the same division? I don't think so, but I do think it's at least a step in the right direction. If they get a guy like Cody Bellinger, if they add another starting pitcher like Blake Snell, then we could start to talk about this being a successful offseason for the Giants, and boy, do they need one. You look at the last couple of years finishing as the bridesmaid to multiple top-end free agents out there, and ultimately spending their money on guys like Michael Conforto, guys like Mitch Haniger, Jock Peterson, Sean Manaea, Ross Stripling. Any of these guys getting you excited in Giants land? I don't think so. But Farhan Zaidi today, I think, stepped a little bit over the line. If that wasn't actually true, which I do believe he's, saying a little bit more than what was actually there. I think Zaidi's embellishing a little bit that they're in there at the same money, that they're in there for the same money as the Giants. Or as the Dodgers. I just don't see it. And, we'll see what happens as far as, Zaidi, if he's able to continue to build this roster out a little bit. Because if they fail once again to bring in top flight free agents, and this is a huge step in the right direction, don't get me wrong, but the fact that, they continue to swing and miss on these big guys leads me to believe that there could be some bigger changes coming in Giants land if they don't land one of those top flight free agents out there. So let us know in the comment section what you think about the Giants, kind of the reshaping of their roster. They have Logan Webb at the top of that rotation, and then just a bunch of guys that can pitch around 100 to 120 innings. Nobody is really giving them 150, 180 innings. Logan Webb, the lone exception to the rule there in San Francisco. Bob Melvin, the new manager there. I'm curious to see if Blake Snell, who had a great year there in San Diego as his own, where Bob Melvin was his manager last year, maybe there's a connection there. Seattle's said to be interested as well, along with a number of other teams. But I agree with you, Sarah. Good move for the Giants. Welcome in, Sarah. Mark, appreciate you for joining us once again. The market's starting to pick up. I want more pitching for the Cards. I couldn't agree with you more. A former Cardinal today has agreed to a deal, Chris Stratton, with the Kansas City Royals on a 2-year deal, 1 year plus a player option. $3.5 million in the first year with a $500,000 buyout, and a $4.5 million deal in that second year if he picks up the option. Chris Stratton, if you might remember, came over in a deadline deal from the Cardinals to the world champion Texas Rangers, and pitched well over the final couple months of the season, but really struggled the last week or two and wasn't really trusted in the playoffs at all. But he was a good kind of a long man option out of the bullpen for the Rangers last year. Saw a real uptick in his numbers until that final week or two of the season for Texas, and was one of the few relievers that Bruce Bochy could count on in August and September. So good contract for him. I think a little bit of a surprise that he's going to Kansas City, but when you look at the overall Kansas City rebuild of their pitching staff over the last week or two, this team is starting to look like a little bit more veteran leadership is coming in, at least from the pitching side. You saw them sign Will Smith, world champion for 3 consecutive years. I still expect him to be traded by the deadline, but getting some older guys in there, some guys with experience, guys who can show those young guys how to get it done, another good signing for them. And then their biggest signing of the day, Seth Lugo, 3 years, $45 million, 2 years guaranteed, and the third year is a player option as well. Lugo getting $15 per to go to Kansas City. A little bit of surprise as far as the total value of the deal, but great contract for both Royals and for Lugo. Lugo's virtually guaranteed he's going to be starting instead of being pushed around the bullpen, long reliever, those kinds of issues. Lugo has proven that he can be a successful starter this past season with the Padres after not being really given the opportunity with the Mets or Padres beforehand. Now he's going to get to be able to start 32, 33 games every single season, and he's going to have that job until he proves he can't do it. So, a worthwhile investment here for Kansas City. They need starting pitching in the worst way. Cole Ragans, the one guy they got back in that Aroldis Chapman deal at the deadline, one of the only pieces in that starting rotation they can really count on. The rest of their starters have really backed up over the last year or so. They really have nothing coming as far as pitching depth as well. Position player talent, they don't really have too much to speak of outside of Bobby Witt Jr. They need to develop some of their young guys, and so until those young guys are ready, they're going to have to spend some money in order to stay competitive in the AL Central. And I actually like all three signings for Kansas City. I think they're probably going to have one of the biggest improvements from win total from year over year from what they did last year. I know you guys are going, hey, we got Ohtani, we got Lee, we got Yamamoto rumors. Why are we talking about Kansas City? Well, they were very active today. Probably the most active team out there today as far as signings. Biggest dollars, of course, go to the Giants. 6 years, 113 to go to Lee. Great move for them. Paul, I know you guys are really excited to see them finally make a move there. Big move for the Giants finally. Now they need to trade for Paredes from the Rays before Yamamoto decides. That would be a convincing argument. Give them a good third baseman in there, but it's going to cost a lot. You have some good prospects that are ready to come up and make an important or to make an impact for you. I think Lee is a great signing. Maybe the next move for them should actually be Bellinger. I think that would be a great signing for them, and then maybe go after Snell next. I just don't think they're going to be able to bring in Yamamoto as much as I think they're in the market for him. I think both of the New York teams are going to be in there for him. The Giants, of course, and now the Dodgers seem that they're poised to bring him in as well. I would not be surprised if both Yamamoto and Ohtani ended up in the Dodgers clubhouse next year. So keep your eyes peeled for that happening. But Rowdy Tellez, another move that happened today, 1 year, 3.2 guaranteed with another $800,000 available in incentives as well. He goes to the Pirates. Good veteran addition for them. Needs some power in that lineup. The Pirates still need a little bit more starting pitching. They brought in Marco Gonzalez already this offseason. Good move, depth move for them. Gives them a good innings-eating type of starter. Did miss some time last year with the Mariners. Bounced around this offseason via trade. Going from the Mariners to the Braves and now to the Pirates. Now they add Rowdy Tellez to give them a little bit of an uptick offensively. I still don't think they're done. I would not be surprised if they moved on from Bednar. The Guardians seem poised to be willing to trade Emmanuel Clase, who had a little bit of a down year for them as their closer. Seems like they're willing to, try to reset their timeline here in Cleveland. They did bring in Austin Hedges, another piece off of that Texas Rangers team. He will be one of their backup catchers there. Might even start quite a bit out there in Cleveland as well. So a flurry of activity. We told you guys this would happen after Ohtani signs. We're going to start seeing moves every few hours. We saw Andrew Chafin get a Tigers deal yesterday. That deal becoming official today. Let me go ahead and get this pulled up on the screen for y'all. There's that Rowdy Tellez to the Pirates deal. Lee to the Giants. Lugo to the Royals. One bit of injury news. Ronnie Mauricio from the Mets. He has a torn ACL. Is going to miss sometime next year. Not sure if they'll miss the entirety or if he'll miss the entirety of that season, of next season anyway. We shall see. But a tough blow for the Mets. They're retooling this coming year, so it's not really like they're going to miss a World Series run because of it. But would really like to have had him get his feet underneath him a little bit more solidly at the major league level and not have to be bouncing back from injury, going into their most competitive season in 2025. Any Braves news? They're saying my Braves are dark horse for Yamamoto. I think the Braves are in there for any major free agent, Yamamoto being one of them. I would be absolutely stunned if they get him. They have some extra money. They were one of the few teams, that released their financials publicly, and they made a fair bit of money last year, so they do have some extra money to throw around. Unfortunately, it did not work to bring in Nola. Did not work to bring in Gray. They're supposedly in there for Cease. They're also in there for Bieber. They're in there for Glasnow. They're in there for Burns. They're supposedly talking a little bit about Blake Snell. They're supposedly in for Jordan Montgomery. They need a front-of-the-rotation starter. So, if they do get Yamamoto, that would certainly fit the bill. I just think that would be one of the more out-of-the-box moves that they would have done, as an Atlanta Braves organization since their inception. So, we've seen them, really draft and develop talent. We've seen them trade for a little bit here and there. We've never really seen them go in the international pool very often. Most of the time, it's West Coast teams who end up getting them or one of the New York teams. Every once in a while, you get an outlier like the Rangers getting Darvish, the Cubs getting Suzuki, those types of things. Boston getting Yoshida. But for the most part, West Coast teams, one of the New York teams is usually where those guys ultimately end up. I'd be shocked if Yamamoto goes to Atlanta, but I've seen more surprising things this offseason, and we'll see what ultimately happens. A little bit of activity, as I told you guys already today. Royals adding a couple of pitchers today. Biggest move, though, goes to the Giants. 6 years, $113 million to Young Ho Lee, who likely will be their everyday center fielder. Of course, they have Mitch Haniger out there as well. Jock Peterson's now a free agent, so they could still add a corner outfield bat / first base option. That's why I say Bellinger would be a great fit for them. I'm hoping to see, them make one major addition as far as at the plate for them. As far as for the Giants, they need somebody in the middle of that order to really take some of the pressure off the other guys in that lineup. They do have some young pieces coming, both in the rotation and as far as position players, but most of that team has gotten old over the last couple of years. They've tried turning it over the last year or two, and it just hasn't worked. They've tried bringing in big-time talent. Bryce Harper, they most notably missed on. Aaron Judge last year. Ohtani this year now. Correa as well. They need to lure one of the big fish, and it's time they do so. I think they'll ultimately get one this offseason. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Whether that be Snell or Bellinger, it would be great for them. If they don't, then I think Zaidi's probably out of a job. So we'll see what happens there. Ohtani press conference is this Thursday. It is. Leslie, the Braves can get somebody, but I would prefer Jordan Montgomery. Exactly. If I'm the Braves, Montgomery's probably going to cost you, 6 years, 140, 145. Maybe you can lure him from Texas because Texas seems to be dragging their feet to be able to sign him to a deal. But that's also because they're also looking at the Josh Hader market. They have to consider money issues. But if there's an opportunity for the Braves, they need to get in there for Jordan Montgomery. But I think Montgomery really wants to go back to Texas. That's why he's being patient as they work through their money issues with that TV deal. So we'll see if he ultimately decides to go back to Texas or if he says, I'm tired of waiting. I want a deal before we get to Christmas. If that does happen, then I think it really opens up the doors to teams like the Mets, the Giants, the Braves, the Cardinals even. I think could be back in the picture there for Jordan Montgomery as well. But good move there by the Giants bringing in Lee. Good move by the Kansas City Royals bringing in Lugo, Stratton, and Smith. Ohtani deal, of course, 10 years, $700 million, $70 million per season, 68 of which is deferred. You guys take your pick. Make a comment. Let us know what you guys think of any one of these deals. Make sure you guys hit that 100% or star or hit that heart button in the chat as well. Welcome in, Jose. San Diego looking at Bellinger strongly. I don't think they're in the market for a Bellinger. Honestly, I just don't think they have the money for it. I think that the best case scenario they had was Lee possibly falling to, in that 6-year, $80, $85 million range. That didn't happen. Obviously, he goes for 113 over 6 to the Giants. But for Bellinger, your market is probably looking at minimum $150, $160 million over 8 years minimum. That's $20 million per season. They just made that Soto move to clear off some salary and recoup some value back from Soto that they traded to Washington to bring him in. Bellinger could be a nice addition for them, don't get me wrong, but I think that puts them back at square one as far as their biggest goal as far as trying to save money. They have some good prospects coming as far as corner outfielders. They could use a center fielder. Bellinger could fill that spot. Just kind of depends on what they ultimately decide to do with the rest of that roster. But I just think Bellinger is going to be too high of a price point. I would still handicap it as teams like the Cubs, Giants, maybe the Blue Jays if they circle around to him as well as the favorites for Bellinger to sign. I would put Padres in more of that dark horse category. If they found a way to clear off some other money somehow, maybe make some room for a Bellinger, it could make some sense, but that would require them, surprising all of us and trading another major piece off of that team, which I just don't think is going to happen. A year ago, I would have believed that they could have moved a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr. Right now, he seems to be one of the better, or I think he graded out as the best defender in right field last year, if I remember correctly, as far as defensively. But I'll have to check the numbers on that one, but he's still a plus defender out there in the outfield either way. And the bat seems to be coming along. The suspension, maybe he's starting to grow up a little bit. And I think at the time of the suspension, you could have at least had a conversation with the Padres to move off of that money. But right now, that just seems like a great deal, a great value. And he seems to at least be a little bit more mature. Maybe shaking up that clubhouse a little bit, moving on from guys like Snell and all the other productive innings that they got out of those pitchers, moving on from Soto, just shaking things up, saying, hey, losing isn't going to cut it here. Even with less talent, might make the sum of the parts play a little bit better by getting some of those personalities out of the clubhouse. From what you hear about the rumors around San Diego is that there was just a toxic mix in the clubhouse. They don't really point any fingers at anyone specifically, but everybody seems to be, at least on the national media side, that they're of the belief that cleaning out some of those guys, cleaning out Soto, etc., that guys weren't necessarily, part of the solution for why, or part of the solution to get back to winning, but weren't necessarily part of the problem either. Just shaking things up a little bit could get get that clubhouse back to the way it needs to go. So we'll see if that's the right move for San Diego long term. I just don't think they're going to have money to go after Bellinger, to your point there. I think they're going to be looking a lot cheaper, more bargain bin type deals, the Rowdy Telez's of the world, those types of moves to kind of finish off their free agency period. They're still looking for more pitching, by the way. I would, if they're going to spend money, they're going to do it on the pitching side. They're not going to be doing it necessarily for a hitter. I'd be frankly shocked at this point if they spent that level of money. The one guy I thought they might splurge on from a lineup perspective was Lee. They were said to be really interested in bringing him in. They were, sick of the poor offensive production they were getting out of Trent Grisham out there in center field. Part of the reason why he was included in that deal, not only for the money to save some money, was because they wanted a better hitter out there in center field. So I thought Lee would have been a great fit there. They were connected to him. I thought if the price point stayed low enough, they could make that kind of a deal happen. Start his deal out low, $4 million this year, $8 million next, $12 million the next, 16 the next, and by the end of it, you're getting 15, 16, 17, 18, $20 million by the end of it. But unfortunately, 6 years, 113 to go to the Giants, and Padres just ultimately couldn't get the job done. Telez did sign with the Pirates today. 1-year deal gives them some good veteran leadership there on the offensive side, much like Carlos Santana did last year. I think Santana a little bit better of a leader in the clubhouse, but I think Telez is going to give them a little bit of pop at first base. They've got some good young position players already in place, just need to continue their growth a little bit, and then they really need some starting pitching. Skeens is going to be their number one at some point. Keller's probably going to be their number two. They need to get another, starting pitcher in there, number 2, 3 type starter in there to really, accelerate their process in that NL Central. They should be a team that should compete by next season, not in 2024, but in 2025, at least for an NL Central crown. The other teams in that division, the Reds still look to be very good. The Cubs are going to be very good. Brewers are going to take a little bit of a step back. They're going to be kind of retooling a little bit this year. Then you look at the Cardinals. They've already, souped up their pitching staff. It's going to be very competitive, but the Pirates should be there if they can just get one more, at least a number 2 or a 3 type starter in there. Eduardo Rodriguez type starter, that's a little bit more money than I think they're willing to spend, but if they can make a trade of Bednar, the trade we keep proposing on here is Bednar to the Rangers for a guy like Dane Dunning, who really kind of accelerated his numbers towards the end of last year as far as strikeouts really, went through the roof at the end of the year for him, way higher than they had been, at any point in his career. Maybe he's figured something out, and the Rangers obviously didn't trust him in the postseason. You could capitalize on that if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates by giving them what they need in Texas in a closer while getting one of their starting pitchers that they don't necessarily trust in the postseason. But you notice the trending numbers for Dunning look like they're getting better to where he could be a number 2, possibly even an ace if those numbers continue to grow at the rate that they have been over the last couple months. Will you say my Phillies are done this offseason, or should I keep an eye on another signing, maybe a trade? Good question, Jose. As far as the Phillies, I don't think they're done by any means. I still think they're looking for a corner outfielder type player as far as for the offense. Nothing major, so don't expect anything, mind-blowingly awesome. I do think they're looking for one more bench type bat at least, though. However, I do think they're looking for some closer or setup guys. I think they could move Alvarado to that closing spot. I think that's ultimately where he'll go. But I would not be surprised if they added a David Robertson, a Phil Maton, a Ryan Stanek, some type of 7th, 8th inning relief to kind of lengthen out that bullpen a little bit. That Nola deal, the part of the reason why it was a hometown discount type of a deal for them was because they don't necessarily have big money to spend on guys like that right now. Nola took, I think, like $30 million less than what the Braves and Dodgers top offers were for Nola because he really likes staying in Philadelphia. So that money that they save hopefully will be passed along to add to that bullpen a little bit. Nola signing is not enough. Couldn't agree with you more, Jose. They were a great team last year. I think they should have made it to the World Series after they beat the Braves anyway, but ultimately they're tripped up by the Diamondbacks. Craig Kimbrell, part of the reason for that, he is no longer going to be there, but we'll see, if they add some more bullpen help as well. Mike, Jason, welcome in. Appreciate you guys for joining us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe as well. hit that heart in the chat if you don't mind. One small market team should sue MLB and the Dodgers for colluding and to not pay luxury taxes to small market teams with this deferment. Well, I get what you're trying to say, Mike. Let me just first say that. As far as colluding to not pay luxury taxes, I mean, they're still counting $46 million per season towards the luxury tax. They're not saving $68 million per season towards the luxury tax, first and foremost. He's still counting towards that luxury tax calculation. But to your point, is it the full $70 million per season that's counting towards it? No, and that's part of the calculations I think MLB needs to be a little bit more clear about. The Athletic had a great article on it today as to why it is not collusion, why it's not, colluding to get around the luxury taxes, because we've seen MLB teams get in trouble with Major League Baseball in the past for trying to do these creative type contracts to get around luxury tax thresholds, those types of things, and this deal is not that. We'll see what ultimately happens, but it was Ohtani's decision to take that $2 million per season to allow them to spend more money elsewhere. Now, for the luxury tax threshold, or for the luxury tax implications, like I said, it's still going to count $46 million towards their luxury tax calculations. What does that mean? Essentially, what that means is more money is going to be in the pockets for the Dodgers in the short term for them to go out there and spend more money on, while they're still paying more in taxes currently as well on top of that $2 million. What does that mean for them after this deal is over? They're going to have to spend more money after this deal is over, $68 million, while the luxury tax implications at that point will only be like $24 million. So it does still hurt the Dodgers right now, but not nearly to the level I think all of us, outside observers would expect it to hurt them at 70 mil per year over 10 years. You'd like to see it be a little bit more clear, cut, and dry. Honestly, I don't like the way that MLB allows teams to do deferment. I would prefer them not to. I understand it allows teams to really build up super teams and defer those payments. That's why the Mets have a Bobby Bonilla day. Eventually, there'll be a Shohei Ohtani day out there in LA. But we'll see, if this thing ultimately works out. Jason, are the Angels going to do anything besides scanning the pitching market aggressive? I would say they're going to try to be aggressive on some of those middle tier starters, the Michael Wakas, the Martin Perez's, the Michael Lorenzens, Tyler Maileys of the world, those types of pitchers. But they're looking to, boost up their major league club because their minor league system is bereft of talent. They traded pretty much all of their top end pieces to try to make a good run at it with Ohtani last year. Told you guys it was a foolhardy mission, absolute mismanagement, organizational disaster. Just could not fathom how they were able to do this and why they did it. I understand that the owner wants you to do it, and if that's the case, that's when you just say, hey, if you don't think I can run your team, if you don't want me to do the right thing for your baseball club and do what should be done and tell you no when you should be told no to, then go ahead and give me my pink slip and I'm out of here and I will be able to be rehireable somewhere else. Perry Manassian said, you're the owner, I got to do what you want. Now Perry Manassian, at best, is going to be a special counsel, an assistant GM somewhere, maybe, but he's never going to be a GM ever again after the way he mismanaged that Angels team and wasn't able to stand up to his owner when he should have. Absolutely organizational malpractice by what Perry Manassian did. I get what Artie Moreno was trying to do. He's an owner. He doesn't get baseball as far as what you need to do to try to win for every single season, not just that one year and then say, oh well, we'll just spend more money and try to win the next year. That's not how it works. You have to develop talent as well. Every team is trying to spend money as well. It's not just going to be, you on the market trying to sign all these top-end players. And that's where, I think the Angels really struggled over the last 5-6 years, is they just could not develop pitching talent. They could not sign pitching talent. And the players they did sign on the offensive side and occasionally on the pitching side just did not work out. And ultimately, they didn't trade Ohtani when they should have. I told you guys 2 years ago that's when they should have been trading Shohei Ohtani. Gotten, Juan Soto ×2 package back. Ultimately, they didn't do it. And here they are, one of the worst farm systems in all of baseball. The Athletics are probably the worst team in all of baseball. Angels are not far behind. And that's even with Mike Trout still on the roster. Ohtani will make enough money to play for the Dodgers and then buy the Dodgers right after he retires. No, he won't. Dodgers are valued way more than $700 million. But I do get your point. He's going to have more advertising money as well. Could he be a part owner of the Dodgers at some point? Absolutely. But he's never going to be able to outright own it all by himself based off of this one contract. If I'm the Phillies, I would give another chance to Lorenzen. You can trade him at the deadline if he's doing bad. I would think that would be a good option for them. They could use a back-end starter, long reliever out of the bullpen. Lorenzen was good for the Tigers and Phillies at times last year. Of course, injuries caught up to him at the very end of the year. That long no-hitter that he had last year, cost him some bullets in his arm, if you will. And I think that ultimately, cost them as far as having him effective in the postseason as well. Jason, should they trade Trout? I don't think Mike Trout will ever ask for a trade, first and foremost. Let me say that. As far as what could they get for him, that's another question. Mike Trout's only played in 50% of games for each of the past 3 years. His numbers finally took a big dip this past season. They're still good numbers, but they're no longer, top 5 player in MLB when he's healthy type numbers. Now you're talking close to 500 slug. You're talking about a guy who's 280, 250, somewhere in there, when he's right now. And maybe if you can keep the guy healthy, he'll be better. Maybe play him a little bit in right field and not allow him to play in center so much might be good for them. But as far as what could you get in value, the market seems to be right around 5 years, $150 million for what he could be on the open market anyway. $30 million roughly per season, or 6 years, $150 anyway. He's got 7 years on his deal right now. You're gonna have to pay down some of that deal. MLB Network did a great breakdown of this with Dan O'Dowd, basically saying you'd have to pay down roughly about $100 million of that deal just to sign him for what he's worth as a free agent right now in the open market. That's $100 million Artie Moreno's going to have to eat to literally give him away to another team. Then you're going to have to eat more of that salary to make him valuable to another team to bring him in as a trade piece. And then at that point, what type of pieces is that team willing to give up in return to get Mike Trout on their team? So should they trade Mike Trout is one question. Will they trade him, and will they be able to find a team interested in him is another question. Should they trade him? Absolutely. I think that this team is basically sunk at this point. See what they can get out of it. Honestly, if I'm Artie Moreno, I say, hey, I'll pay every single dime of that deal right now. You give me, what the Mets did with Scherzer and Verlander. You give me a top-end prospect or two, and then we can really talk about whether or not, a trade like this could work out. But I don't see a team willing to do that kind of a thing. I don't really see a fit out there. Philadelphia could be a fit. I know that's been mentioned as Nick Castellanos going the opposite direction, but even then, the Angels would still have to eat money, and I just don't think Moreno's going to do it. Should they do it? Absolutely, though. But hopefully that answers your question. But in case you guys missed it off the top, a little bit of Giants news. They signed Young-Ho Lee, 6 years, $113 million, coming off of an injury from the KBO. Was their MVP a year ago. Looks like a great player, kind of an Ender Inciarte starter kit is what some have compared him to. I think he's going to be a little bit better than that. They compare him also to Masataka Yoshida from the Boston Red Sox. I think he's also going to be a little bit better than that. Do I think he's the next Ichiro? No, I don't. But I do think he's going to be a very successful signing for the Giants out there. Just kind of, temper your expectations. Is he going to be your number 3 hitter in your lineup every day? No. And if he is, your lineup's really lacking. But that's why I think they still need to keep adding out there in Giants land, like a Bellinger, like a Snell, and keep building for next offseason as well, and then go full bore trying to bring in Juan Soto among other players as well. So the rest of the news around the Giants is the comments Farhan Zaidi had said in the media about the Shohei Ohtani negotiations. Of course, everybody's familiar. 10 years, $700 million, $68 million per season deferred. That same deal, according to Zaidi, was what was offered to the Giants. The Giants said, yeah, we would gladly do that for you, Shohei. Ohtani's camp said, okay, we'll think about it. They sat on it, went to the Dodgers, and they ultimately decided to sign there. Do I believe Zaidi is telling the truth that they are negotiating with Shohei? Absolutely. Do I think there was an offer submitted similar to this? I do. Do I think that the same offer that the Giants said, yeah, we were very amenable to that, versus what the Dodgers ultimately signed him to, is ultimately what ended up happening? No, I don't. I think he's telling a little bit of a tall tale there, and I think that does him no favors when it comes to other free agents on the market. I mean, if you weren't willing to go that price point, or if they never came around to you in the first place to see if you'd want to match that, that's okay. Tell us that. Tell us the truth. As San Francisco Giants fans out there, I'm sure you guys would rather know what's really going on with your team, rather than, hey, let me comfort my fans by saying, absolutely, we would have signed that deal. He just preferred going to the Dodgers. So I'm not the bad guy. Don't look at me. I would have done it. It's Ohtani that said, no, we don't want to go to the Giants. We want to go to the LA Dodgers instead. I think that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek anyway for Zaidi, for the way he kind of portrayed that in his interview with Baggerly, I think was his name, on Twitter, kind of a Giants reporter there, with that interview with Zaidi as well. And a little bit surprised the Giants, didn't take the high road on it and say, hey, didn't work out, we're on to other, targets. We're the San Francisco Giants. We are a marquee destination here in baseball. We are still looking to sign top flight free agents. That's exactly the route I would have gone, and pivoted to saying, we're in there for some of the other remaining top flight free agent targets out there, as well as trade targets, that all are, some of the trade targets that are out there. Now, Zaidi can't say specific names as far as players that he's, negotiated in or interested in bringing in. It's just kind of an unwritten rule. I think it's actually written somewhere, that it's frowned upon essentially for GMs to comment on active free agents. Now, the team, as far as like personnel underneath them, they don't mind them discussing it. But as far as the GM level, it's expected anyway that you don't necessarily mention the ongoing negotiation status with other free agents that are out there. It just, I guess, is a bad look from what they say out there. I'm not necessarily believing that argument, but that's what they tell us anyway. But, I just would have taken the high road if I was Zaidi and said, congratulations to the Dodgers. We're on to other things. We'll see you guys next April. Those kinds of things. We'll win the division. We're looking at some other starters. We're looking at to improve our lineup, something to that effect, rather than, hey, we would have signed him to that deal too. I'm not really buying that argument though. So appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. As I said, we'll be live for you guys every single evening, weekday evening anyway, breaking down all the latest from the MLB trade rumors, free agent signings, rumors as far as where Yamamoto's going to do, where he's going to go. Yamamoto, the update there is that he actually took more meetings today, but he's still got another day's worth of meetings before we get any clarity as far as the finalists for him, or maybe a direction that he's leaning towards going. There's so many teams that are in the mix. I think the count we last saw was around 18 teams were in on Yamamoto. John Heyman basically saying that half of those teams were already out of the price range for where the Yamamoto contract talks are already at, around 250 plus million, getting closer to 300 million. But we'll see what ultimately he signs for. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Again, Ohtani, 10 years, 700 million, 68 per season deferred. Lee goes to the Giants, 6 years, 113 million. Seth Lugo, 2 years plus a player option to go to the Kansas City Royals. Stratton and Smith also go to the Royals. Hedges goes to the Guardians. We've seen a flurry of activity today, and hopefully we continue to see more of it in the build-up to Christmas Eve, when most big-time free agents, most middle free agents all sign. Occasionally we get a couple of them that take until the new year, but the majority of them like to have their job locked down by that time. So make sure you guys join us tomorrow evening as we'll update you guys again on all the latest. Hopefully we'll get some Yamamoto headlines and see what the leaders for him are in the clubhouse, and see how the first round of meetings for him have gone. Hopefully we'll get some updates as well as far as the market for Cody Bellinger, and then the trade market as well. Glasnow is one of the best pitchers on the market. He is expected to be moved relatively soon. I would expect him to move probably right around the same time as Yamamoto signs. I think the loser for him ultimately pivots to Glasnow as the next best option. The market around other international free agents is also moving around Imanaga. The Yankees and Mets are said to have negotiated with him quite a bit over the last 24, 48 hours. And, if they miss on Yamamoto, I'd expect both of the New York teams to be heavily interested in bringing in Imanaga as well. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at UpsideSN, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.